All right, so we've been talking about God, and God is like a non-dual realization. It's like this realization that is beyond ideas, beyond thought, is beyond conceptualization, is beyond form, is beyond time, is beyond space. This loving presence at the source point of all creation, and yet it when you have this realization and you deepen in this relationship with God, it it emanates all things. So um, it there's a everything becomes illuminated, in that light. And as you move from actually in Taoism, they have like the Tao is like basically the term for God, and then it goes from the Tao to which Tao is like no thing because there's no actual thing to two things, and the two things are the yin and the yang. So those two things are like the source of all the other things. In Taoism, they say that's the source of the 10,000 things. The source of the 10,000 things or the comes from the two things, the yin and the yang. So the yin being the feminine, the yang being the masculine, right? And out of the yin and the yang, everything else becomes created, um, including us. We become created from the yin and the yang. And that synergy, that harmony of the yin and the yang is where the greatest level of fulfillment and well-being and empowerment and creativity and miraculousness and magic comes from. And it feels like that's been a real challenge for us as human beings to have that synergistic balance and harmony between the yin and the yang. And there's a lot of trauma there. There's a lot of healing that needs to happen there. And there's a lot of pain there. And there's a lot of imbalance there. And um, I kind of learned this through coaching. Joe, can you just check the mute button? I hear some different things happening. Um, I learned this through the coaching and working with people. And it's interesting because when I first started doing the coaching, it was majority women that I was working with. And um, so I would kind of hear from that perspective and just really hearing um, the pain that's there as far as the relationship with men and with the masculine, right? And outside of that realm too. So it was to the point where that actually was the primary inspiration for me to create the men's mastermind group. It was actually came mostly from women saying like, this is something that's needed. This is something that we need to have, you should be doing, and it'd be really great to do this. And so I felt this inspiration and then created the men's mastermind group. And it's just been super awesome. Like what's happening there is really powerful, really amazing. We have two representatives from that group, Jacob and Jeff right now. There may be some more guys coming in. Um, but so good that it's like, well, let's kind of start to share it with people and tell people about like what's happening, what's going on, and what we're doing, and create sort of a dialogue and a place to share inquiry and reflection. And um, but it's been really an amazing journey for me of just really seeing that there's basically two spiritual pathways. There's the feminine spiritual pathway and the masculine feminine spiritual way, and they complement each other, and they go in synergy together. And there's something really powerful about that. And also, it's something that is lacking in the world right now. So I feel like one of the primary intentions for me is to create that proper balance and that proper synergy and that proper um, power that comes when those two energies are working together, and when, you know, the a woman who's a feminine woman can feel like she's resting in her feminine power, and a man who's a masculine man can feel like he's in his masculine power, and they can harmonize together and co-create magic and co-create miracles, and and kind of feel like, oh yeah, that's why we're here. That's what we're here to do. That's what it's all about. And so that's kind of our focal point of discussion today and exploration today. Um, I want to leave a lot of space for you guys to share. Um, I'll ask some different questions and things, but I'll leave some space for you guys to share and ask questions, explore things, ask other people in the group questions. And I think that the primary thing is just, if you really want to simplify it, it's the ability to honor the feminine and the ability to honor the masculine. And a lot of people have trouble honoring both. You know, they might be able to honor one, but they can't really honor the other one, or they have, like I said, trauma, or there's fears, or there's, you know, there's an inability to kind of um, be at ease and or comfortable, or comfortable with both energies. I don't like the word comfortable actually. At ease, relaxed with both energies. So that's the topic. And I'm just going to open up if anybody has anything to share, reflect on what I just said, and open up to you guys.
Okay, so I will take advantage of this time. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, everybody, for being here. I guess maybe I'll just share a little bit of my journey through the mastermind with you, Brian. Does that sound good?
Yep.
I started seeing Brian as on a personal like mentor uh, relationship about 5 years ago, and was really struggling in a dark place. Didn't know who I was. Didn't know that I was worthy of this, like where I am now, being in a community with such amazing people. And um, he started the first mastermind in January of 2020. So shortly after I had started working with him, um, and I started realizing that I was able to share openly about who I was, and be accepted, like where I was at, and loved unconditionally with like no judgments. These people didn't have a story about me, and um, it really opened me up to a level of freedom and confidence um, that has really kind of, I guess, opened me up to my um, genuine, like, masculine side of who I am, and being able to stand strong in that. So I think it was like co-ed mastermind for the first like couple years, I guess. And then for the past at least 2 years, I think it's been just the men's mastermind. And that's been like next level, because as a man, being able to come in and share with other men, I'm able to share things that I wouldn't necessarily share in front of women, and being able to open up in front of other men um, in a way that's totally authentic and vulnerable, and sharing stuff that maybe I just wouldn't be able to share in front of other women. So that's been a whole next level of magic, like finding my true masculine and in connection with God and who I'm supposed to be and what I'm doing here, and exploring all that. And it's really opened me up to a level of confidence and just surety, like sureness within myself and connected to myself in a way that I never even imagined possible. And just opening up to the power within myself, and also like realizing that power within myself, I feel like I'm able to hold that power for other people as well, like how I show up with friends and community and strangers, like trying doing my best to become like the ideal masculine and somebody who respects everybody, and the feminine, the women especially, and like supporting that feminine power and respecting the female, I think has been huge for me too. And I've been in several situations over the past couple years where I've had very good opportunities to exercise like what I've learned in that respect for women. Um, and every time like I'm able to show that respect, or really stand in my masculine and stand strong and firm, it's really like propelled me into more of understanding it and empowered me really to just do better and be more of a true powerful man. um, and I feel like I mean it's just opened me up to so much. Like I feel confident and powerful now to start stepping into more of my purpose in helping other people, and I'm just beginning this journey to like share what I've realized and what I've found, and with other people in a form that, you know, I've never, I guess I do it just in communicating with other people, but in more of a purposeful way. And yeah, I'm just so grateful um, to be here. And the group of guys that are in the mastermind now, I think there's like nine. I think there's nine of us, and I think eight of us have just done two consecutive seasons together. And then Jeff and Jason and I'm trying to think, probably several other guys. We've been on this journey for over a year together doing the mastermind. And I think a lot of the magic for me has come with the consistency of sticking with something, doing something good for myself that is like forward moving progress in enhancing who I am as a man. The consistency of that has been phenomenal too. And I think I've only missed one mastermind session since January 2020. So it's just been, I mean, other people in my life, Brian has probably seen like more than anybody the transformation that's taken place. And um, you know, oftentimes you tell me, Brian, it's just the consistency of it. You know, staying consistent. And when you're surrounded by um, such a such a powerful masculine energy and container that's safe, and you're able to open up, it just, you have no other option than to transform and transcend. Uh, so I think I'm pretty complete with that. I'm glad to be here. Super grateful for all the guys that I'm connected with in the mastermind, and all the support that we have. We go on vacations together and do all kind of stuff. Jeff and I talk regular on the phone and help support each other outside of the mastermind. I do that with Jeff as well as like several other of the guys. Yeah, so totally magical, and I'm so grateful to be in this place experiencing that. Gratitude to Brian for facilitating that and like listening to that call and making that space possible.
Thanks, Jacob. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
You're sharing authentically. Yeah, you know what's interesting is when what I notice in like talking with women and what they find um attractive or important in a man, I think that there's obviously there's multiple things, but one thing that's interesting to me is um, someone who's consistent, who shows up consistently and does what they say they're going to do, right? And is accountable, right? So I see some women nodding their heads in agreement. Um, and so like that's pretty basic, but also it's like not necessarily that common. And like that's like inherent in the mastermind group. Is like those are like the basic things. It's like you gotta show up consistently, do what you say you're gonna do, and be accountable if you don't, you know? So I think that I find that that's really important. Um, Women really want to feel that in in a man, and that creates trust, you know, and trust is really the key in a relationship, right? A relationship, any relationship, but you know, relationship with a man and woman, trust is the key. So um, that trust is built by being consistent, do what you say you're going to do, be accountable, and then if that's happening over a sustained period of time, then the woman can relax into her feminine. And I remember I had this conversation with a friend of mine, and I was asking her, I was asking her the same kind of question, like, what do you, because she was talking about dating and so forth. And I was saying, like, what do you find attractive in a man? And she said, well, um, if I'm with him or if I'm in his presence, my nervous system relaxes. And that felt like very true to me. You know, that felt very key because the basically the man, his energy, if it's working, if it's synergized, it's an energy of safety and protection, right? So that's physical, but it's also emotional, it's also spiritual, it's also psychological. So then she can just be relaxed, soften, and then if she can feel relaxed, then her feminine powers can flow and come to the surface. But if she can't feel relaxed, then her feminine powers cannot come to the surface, and then all sorts of problems arise from there. So now we get into a whole deeper set of things where, you know, what I've encountered is like women are, a lot of women are working very stressful jobs that are put them in a masculine role, and and then it's hard to get into that feminine space outside of the job. Um, and sometimes there's such disconnection that they don't even know that that's important, or that they forgot kind of who they are, sort of a thing, right? So to have that space in a relationship where you can kind of talk about this sort of stuff, you know, like where are we with our masculine and feminine polarity? You know, are you feeling like you can relax in your feminine? Are you feeling like you can be in your masculine? Um, you know, like is that feeling like that polarity is in a good place? Is it not in a good place? If it's not in a good place, what can we do to address it? You know, these are like important conversations to have within yourself and within your relationship, or if you're single, just in your own kind of self-inquiry, or so if you're working with somebody, because what I've seen is like the power lies on either one of those poles. If you're in the feminine polarity, there's tremendous power in the feminine. If you're in the masculine polarity, there's tremendous power in the masculine. But if you're just kind of flopping in the middle, there's not that much power there. So it's an interesting thing where it's like actually like either pole, and then if you're together and you're both in the poles, then it's like a battery. You have the positive charge and negative charge, and then you know there's all this power in the battery. So it's something to kind of look for and pay attention to, and be able to kind of just talk about and explore. Um, and just one more thing I'll say about this, and I'll open it up, is when we think about power, we tend to think about the masculine power, because that's the one that it's easier to see. Um, and so what I've seen that's happened is a lot of women have been conditioned to think, well, if I want power, I got to step into the masculine power. And this is kind of like, in my opinion, the mistake of feminism is feminism is really masculinism. So it's like masculinity is great, femininity is bad. I'm a woman, I want to be more masculine and have more power. And it's like, if that's your natural state, if you're naturally a very masculine woman, that's great. But most women are not naturally masculine, so it's not that great. It doesn't feel that good, and it feels very like exhausting and draining. And then there's this thing that dawns of like, oh, actually, there's tremendous power in the feminine, and I can actually go into the feminine, and it's a different kind of power. Um, if you think of the masculine's kind of like going outward. It's like penetrating into everything, you know? And the feminine is like, I think of the feminine as like a queen. Like you're just like shining and you're drawing everything into you. Everything comes to you. Everything shows up for you. Um, and so these are two different kinds of power and they go together. Obviously, like if you're drawing something in, then the masculine's going in. And then it's, if you think about it like sexual communion, that's pretty much how the energy works in all around us, in the entire universe. And so it's important to like recognize that both of these powers exist. And it may look on the surface, it may look like it's the masculine power that's happening, but actually it's the feminine power that's also happening equally. Um, and just to recognize that and realize that and kind of hone into which one is more natural to you, what's your natural design, and just, you know, be what you are and 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 be authentic to what you are. It's not trying to be something you're not, it's being your authentic self, and just allowing your gifts to shine and trusting in your natural essence and things will spontaneously move for you in miraculous ways the more that we do that. If you want a reference for a author, we talk about David Deida in the Men's Mastermind. We've actually been reading some of his chapters from his book, The Way of the Superior Man, which a lot of women that I know really love this book. So it's not just for men. Um, and basically, there's kind of like three stages that you go through. There's sort of like the traditional, um, it's kind of like an unconscious masculinity and femininity where it's kind of more about control and all this kind of stuff. And then you awaken onto spiritual path. And when you awaken on the spiritual path, the man will, and I've been through all these three stages, so I can speak to them I can speak to them directly. So the second stage is the man goes more into his feminine. So this is kind of like what we call like flow boy, like, like kind of like the flowy hippie, you know, that kind of guy. Has trouble being consistent, has trouble showing up and doing what they say they're going to do, has trouble with accountability, but very flowy, fun. Um, and then potentially you go into the third level, which is what we're developing in the men's mastermind group. And so that's like you're awakening. So you have the feminine component. The feminine is kind of like the creativity, the intuition, the feeling, the energy. You can feel energy. So you have that component, and then as a man in the third stage, you bring in um, being able to think linearly, being able to take action consistently, being able to kind of function and kind of take the lead in the linear world of time and space. And so then the three stages for the women are kind of like the same thing, but the opposite. She goes more into her masculine in the second phase. Um, and and then the third phase is coming into that balance, that the higher order integration balance. Any questions, comments, reflections from anybody?
I have a comment, but it's a little bit it's tied to what you're talking about, but it's a little bit different. So from my perspective, just to give some context, so I have a TikTok where I make videos about self-improvement. And I actually have a pretty like large following. I have a lot of people that really like the content I make. I've took kind of a hiatus from making content, but originally I would make a lot of self-improvement content that was geared towards men, mainly men. And a lot of it was kind of general, but there was things that were specifically towards men where it pertained to like working out or dating or these different types of things, right? And I think the reason why that was the case is because I think aside from actually just like relationships, right? Because a lot of people when they think about masculine and feminine, they think about just relationships. And I think there's actually a lot of problems in the world pertain specifically either to men or women. And I think especially in the modern generation, I'm Gen Z, I'm 23 years old. A lot of people in my generation, especially younger men, deal with a lot of problems that are unique to them. And for example, like a lot of younger men struggle with addictions to pornography. A lot of younger men struggle with issues in dating. And I think that there are a lot of things in the modern day that contribute to that, like social media, dating apps, these different types of things that make that landscape of dating very hard to navigate. But I also think that there's a lot of problems that are unique to men in general, and I think as you were talking about with the mastermind, as Jacob was talking about, I think like having that ability to talk to people, to have other people in your same gender that you can talk to and relate with on those issues, because I think that's something that we've kind of lost in the modern day. I don't think it's just the fact that people are more isolated, but I also think that like having that sense of community where it's people that you can talk to about your unique issues that you're facing and that people that can relate to that, that's kind of gone away. Um, but I think like, I grew up on a lot of, there was a lot of people that I looked up to on YouTube. There was a guy that I would watch all the time and he talked a lot about masculinity and how to integrate your masculine more, stuff about going to the gym, stuff about dating, stuff about, just basic like, finances, things like that, right? And I think there's really something special about when you can, integrate more into your masculine side and you can have other men as well who will give you information on how to do that. And I also think too, like, like I said, with my TikTok, I was able to give a lot of younger men like help with specific things. Um, but I also think too that recently I've had more of a following of women as well, and a lot of women. I actually made a video uh, not too long ago. It was a video on how to attract like a quality partner, right? And I made that video specific for men, but then I had some comments, and a woman actually asked, "Can you make the same video for women as well?" And I realized that to make a video about women, I had to change a little bit of what I was talking about because for men it was more like you have to become this type of man. Like you have to have courage, you have to have, as my dad said, like you have to be consistent, you have to show up consistently. And a couple other things I talked about as well. But for women, I talked more about having boundaries and how boundaries is very important. And like it's important to have to not just let a man in right away and to actually check to see if they are a quality man, to actually uh you know basically have a good filtering system, to be able to judge whether this man is a quality man or not, right? So I think basically for men and women, there's different issues that they face. There's different problems. There's unique challenges, whether it comes to dating or even just in life in general. I think, especially the younger generation, they face a lot of issues uniquely, and I think it's really helpful to have people that you can relate to, that you can talk to about these specific issues. Like I said, as they were saying in the mastermind, like there's a lot of things that you can say you probably wouldn't say um, if there was people of the opposite gender that were in the room. And it's not to say that they shouldn't hear those things, but it's just to say that a lot of issues are unique to men or unique to women, right? And it's the same thing for women as well. Like there's probably a lot of things that women would say in a room with each other that they probably wouldn't really feel comfortable talking about if another man was in the room, right? So I think again, it's really important to have that community. And I think I've seen a lot of men benefit from that, not just, it's not just the mastermind that my father has had, but I've seen a lot of other men's groups. I was actually part of a men's group myself that, again, one of the guys that I looked up to for a long time, he created a men's group, and it really helped me, like immensely helped me. So if you're a guy and like you haven't been in a men's group before or something, or you haven't really integrated your masculinity in a way where you can connect to that with other men as well, I really think that that's a powerful thing. And I also say the same thing for women. I think there needs to be more women's groups as well, more groups that are helping women to have more community and to have more of those conversations that they can have and talk about those unique issues, because I think for everyone it's a really powerful thing to have.
Thank you, Gio. Couple reflections. So as far as boundaries and what you're bringing in, our self-worth and our self-love is so key, because we're going to be reflecting back, whether it's consciously or unconsciously, we're going to be reflecting back into our lives the level of self-love we have, the level of self-worth we have. So that's just really important to keep in mind. And like the way to access that deepest level or deeper level of self-love and self-worth, it's not so much like, oh, I did this, or I'm a good person because I did this or did that. It's like the deepest level that's unshakable is that connection with God. When you realize that you are God's creation and you are a child of God, then you are infinitely worthy, exactly as you are. You are the emanation of love. And so you deserve love in return. You deserve to be treated kindly in return. You deserve to be treated compassionately in return. And anything that's not of that essence is just going to be like, it's not going to stick. You may encounter it here and there, but it's not going to resonate, So that's something really, really important to keep in mind. I fully agree that men's groups are really valuable and important. Women's groups are really valuable and important. There are a lot of men's groups and there are a lot of women's groups. And I think ours is awesome, as I said, the men's group that we have. But also, I think a group for men and women to be together and to be in their natural polarity together is really powerful and really exciting, because you have to be able to, um, it's like the rubber hits the road, when we're together, and be able to really, it's like I feel like we're like, there's a sort of a return to something, which is a going forward to something. So it's like, yeah, men and women are different. We're not the same. This should be obvious, but we have to say obvious things these days. So like men and women are the same, or they're not the same, they're different. And we each have our power, and when we come together, that power gets amplified, and there's a synergy that creates something really miraculous when we're together, and be able to come together in the exploration of that and the co-creation of that, I think is special. So that's our intention here. Darren, did you want to say something earlier?
Yeah, it wasn't really like a point to make, just a self-reflection as you were going through about the different levels of,
Yeah.
And I just made a post yesterday online joking about my hyper masculine.
Okay.
And it's like when a guy wants to take the lead and you're like, fuck you, and it's like, no, you want them to take the lead. And I was just saying that it's just so interesting because you can be so I feel like I'm very in tune and intuitive and guided all the time, but yet there's still this area in my life that I guess it's like a blind spot. And it's just cool that this is the conversation tonight, and it's just just shining light so I can see it, and I just thought that was neat. Yeah, and I'm definitely going to be more attentive to the masculine and feminine within myself. Yeah. It's not a topic I really know that much about either.
Mhm.
So again, I think it's cool that this is the conversation tonight.
Mhm. Yeah. And do you think that it's when there's someone that wants to take the lead, a man that wants to take the lead, and you're like, do you think it's trust?
Control.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
sure trust as well, but yeah, more like, yeah, probably more of like a control.
Well, control is a lack of trust. It's like
Okay.
I need to stay in control because I don't trust you, you
Right.
know?
Right.
Yeah.
I want to speak to that
Yep.
Please.
because I actually saw that post, Darian, and I chuckled. um, but I think it can be common in a way because, and I think on one level it happens because there's like a testing phase that can come about, and it's like, well, is this person going to say, is he going to do what he said he's going to do? And until I can trust that with consistency, my masculine is probably going to step up and do the thing. You know what I mean? So it takes like a really strong leader in
Yeah.
a man to see that in a woman and be like, kind of see her overcompensating, and just lead with example time and time again. And yeah, sometimes it is appropriate for maybe, I'm just thinking like in a household situation, or, sometimes I do need to step up and take the lead in something because Brian's busy, but generally speaking, women want a really strong leader to
Yeah.
show up consistently and do the thing they said they're going to do. And then over time, and this is not like, oh, all of a sudden we're there. Like it can start over too. You know what I mean? In any given month. So it's like, it's kind of this constant thing, but I do see that playing out a lot, and talk about that a lot with my girlfriends and stuff. So
Yeah, I think that there's actually something natural, my understanding, natural in the process, kind of like the courting stage, or really, like you said, any stage, um, where I think the woman does challenge the man. It's like, are you really for real? Are you really gonna do what you say you're gonna do? Are you really gonna be consistent? Do you really want this? Like that, what's that Sheryl Crow song? Are you strong enough to be my man? It's like that. And I think the man, the masculine man, the conscious masculine man is wired to embrace challenge. Like they want to be challenged, so they're not going to run from that challenge. Now the flow boy, he will probably run to something that's easy and, quick escape. But the conscious masculine man will embrace the challenge. And then you'll be like, okay, I think the women set up, I mean, the feminine kind of sets up like little tests, you know, and then this, the man needs to pass the test,
Okay.
you know. That's my sense of how
yeah,
that
and it's
goes.
like, I also just want to add, it's like subconscious in many ways. It's
Yeah,
not like, oh, I'm gonna do this
exactly.
and I'm gonna test him. No, it's like totally
It's
happens,
like
like
biological.
yeah, biological, for
Yeah.
real. I'm sure it
Another thing I've
happens.
heard is that when the woman is pregnant, and then when she first gives birth, she's in a very vulnerable state, obviously, right, biologically. So there's something in the wired in the biology of like, you want to test a man to make sure he'll show up for you, in that kind of dynamic, in that kind of situation, and be there and be present with you, which makes sense.
Yeah.
And I want to bring up one other thing, Annie. You were talking earlier about the father, right? This was earlier today. You were talking about the father and the importance of I mean, for all of us, but we're talking about women and their relationship with the father and how that can create the sense of trust in the masculine. So it's great. I think it'd be great if you'd say like a little bit about that.
Yeah, I've just seen this in my experience, and I know not everybody's path is the same. So I just kind of want to like preface with that. But just notice that as I like deepen on my spiritual path, the more I can, and it like, it's easy for me now, but the more I can trust in the higher power of the Father, God the Father, the more I can trust like the masculine in relationship. So, you know, as we know, it's just really important to have that foundational sense of, you know, your connection with God. And you know, if that's in some way severed or not super strong or wounded, then it's really hard to surrender to any man. And it's true for men too. And I don't, you know, I'm not a man, so I don't want to try to speak to that one. Maybe like some man in the space could speak. And I guess when Brian and I were kind of talking it out, we kind of came to the conclusion that it was more of like a because then there's like the father and then the man. So like that's a different polarity altogether. And it's like, well, the man needs to kind of learn to be humbled and like in service to the father. And if he can do that,
And he'll be trusted by the woman.
Yeah, and if he can do that within his nervous system, because men have nervous systems too, you know, just operates differently. If his nervous system can soften in that way to that energetic, then he can be of servitude to a woman, to the woman in his life.
I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel that, Annie, for sure. And I feel like the further that I go on this journey with connecting with God, and surrendering, and like my prayer for a long time has been, may I just let go and surrender and let you, God, create through me what I'm supposed to be. And I think the more that I deepen into that, the stronger masculine I can stand in, the more power in the true masculine, like the balance. And that's one thing I want to mention is like the way the men that were my role models as a child and growing up as a young adult were just fucking toxic, most of it. And it was horrible. It was not an example of a man, what a man's supposed to be. And that's another, like this mastermind, like being surrounded by these great men that are trying to do better and like very aware of how they're showing up and very intentional with how they're showing up and communicating, is totally next level. And me being a father, it makes me look at like how I'm raising my children and how I'm showing up to everybody out there. Like, what kind of man am I showing? Am I leading by example? Like, what am I showing my kids? What am I showing these people of what true masculine is? And I think that's probably an issue or a problem with many, many young men around today. Because the generation, you know, of my parents and, you know, the people of that generation was totally different. And I think kids were totally unaware what they were doing, how they were acting, how they were treating their kids and everybody else. And just becoming aware of that and is very huge and very
it's big.
It's big on who we're creating. How are the men going to be next?
That's why I was talking about the healing component, right? Because like, you know, there's God the Father, but then there's our biological father, right? And so many people did not have a good relationship with for various reasons with their biological father. And so that trust wasn't there in childhood. And so now it's like, how do you create that? That's the question, right? So that requires healing and being able to let go and being able to open and be able to trust. And I had this interesting, and Bethany, we're going to get to you in just a moment. I see your hand up there, so bear with me for a second. But I had this interesting, I had a friend who was yoga teacher, really into yoga. I was very into yoga. So that's kind of what our connection, we actually met in India. So that was our connection point, was through yoga and the whole yogic world. And then, as I mentioned in a previous circle, had this kind of unexpected encounter with Jesus, and then I found out that she had the same thing or a very similar thing happen at the same time, and we were like started talking about it, and what she told me was that I said, what led you in this direction, or what was happening for you? And she said, well, like I had this like divorce, and I was having bad relationships with men, and I realized that like, I'm kind of paraphrasing what she was telling me, but she's basically telling me kind of what Annie said, that like I didn't have a good relationship with God the Father. And I had this realization that I needed to like form and deepen that relationship. And then deepening that relationship with God the Father, then I could deepen the proper healthy relationship with a man that would, be kind of a surrogate for God the Father in this earthly plane. And now she seems to have developed a really healthy, loving relationship since then. So that's one story to share in that regard. Okay, Bethany, you want to share?
Yeah, so
Hey.
hey, sorry. I've been doing a couple of things. Sorry, I was multitasking this evening, but so I just want to say, so first of all, I know we're all in this, I feel like we're all on this journey to kind of rediscover what feminine and masculine actually means in today's day and time, because I believe in this isn't just me, it's just things that I've read, and one particular person that I follow in particular who has done a pretty significant shift um, on her belief of what feminine and masculine is. And so I think what's happened in our culture and as a society as a whole is that we've misconstrued what the definition of both of those really is. And I think what's happened is that we've gotten so off track with um, women and men, like, and I don't want to say the roles that we play, but that's, for lack of a better way to put it, the feminine has lost a lot of her feminine, and the masculine has lost a lot of his masculine. And I think like
Yep.
it's flip flopped to some
Yep.
degree.
Yep.
And
Exactly.
I think we're all trying to figure out what it looks like for each one of us in our relationships.
Yeah.
And and I'll just put her name out there, Kelly Brogan. I know
I
Brian.
knew what you were gonna say.
you know who I was talking about, but she's
Yeah.
done, I mean, she used to be a huge feminist, like
Yeah.
huge feminist, and she's done this complete 180, 360, whatever it is. And
180.
she's 180.
Yeah.
And she's like, I mean, her messages are just so beautiful to listen to. And she's so empowered in her feminine now. And I love it. And through some of what she has shared, just in the last probably, I don't know, 6 months to a year, they've been pretty subtle, but I have experienced shifts in my marriage because I have started to let go of certain qualities in myself that I didn't even realize I was doing, that I didn't realize were very masculine qualities. And it was like I was stepping all over the toes of my husband. And in a way, it was a form of disrespect for my husband, and I didn't even realize I was doing it. And when I stepped back from doing certain things, reacting a certain way or trying to control a situation, or just making sure he did things a certain way. It was just like when I laid off of some of that stuff, there was just this subtle shift in our relationship, and I was able to sink more into my feminine again and start coming from use the word gentle and softer place. And instead of this like hard controlling, I must have everything done, a specific way kind of attitude. And so it's just been a very interesting journey, honestly. And so just wanted to share that.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing. Yeah, I had a little conversation, some little back and forth with Kelly Brogan on that, and like basically she has also looked at David Data's stuff, and what we're talking about is like it's like that stage 2 where exactly what you're saying, like the men are too in their feminine, the women are too in their masculine, and everyone's trying to be the same, and it's and then so now we're going into this stage 3 where that higher order polarity can really shine, and everybody can be honored in their own empowerment. There's another, I forgot her name, but Annie has her book as well. She wrote the book called The Portal. She's a midwife. Do you know what her name is? Annie?
Yolanda Norris Clark.
Yeah, she's friends with Kelly, and she's also been on the same journey, reporting the same thing. Yeah, a lot of people are on this.
Yeah, and just another book that I'm reading too, or a book I'm reading. Well, Kelly has a new book out. It's called Reclaimed Woman, and I'm only partway through it, but it's phenomenal. And then another book that I've been reading is called The Empowered Wife.
Yes.
And
yeah.
It's it's a little triggering for sure, because there's some things in it that I'm just like, really? You want me to do that in my marriage? No way. It's kind of like, it's that like, and I hate to use this word because it's a triggering word, because it's a triggering word for me even, but like the word submissive
Yep.
is, I mean, that's just such a triggering word, but for lack of a better way to put it, that's kind of what this gal, her name's Laura Doyle, who wrote The Empowered Wife. And she has like these 6 intimacy skills that you incorporate into your marriage. And she works with all sorts of, women, thousands of women that have completely changed their marriage and their relationship with their husbands and their significant others and so forth. And so it's just been a really, it's an interesting but good journey. So, yeah.
Yeah, if you think of, okay, so submissive, the one who's submissive is submitting to someone else who's doing the work. Does that make sense? So I think if you reframe it, the way I think of it is like the feminine, if you're really in your feminine, you're really in your feminine power, you are, and this is the way, as a man, this is how we want to feel our women. This is the preferred state. You want her to feel relaxed and playful, and just she could just have fun, and so it's like submissive is kind of like, I'll let the man do it. You know what I mean? Now, is that so bad to let the man do it and you can just play and have fun and relax? Right? It's like somehow that's been lost. It's like that's like, it's not even considered like you don't even think that's like an option anymore, but it is an option, and that's something that like Annie and I have been, and I'm not saying that's like 24/7, right? Obviously there's things that need to get done here and there, but that's kind of this place that Annie and I have come into, that kind of polarity. And it's a beautiful state. And we've Gio has an interesting theory. You want to give us your capitalism theory, Gio, and how this all came into being?
If you want me to get into it, I mean, it's
Just
a
try
little
to keep
bit.
it, just try to keep it to like, concise. But yeah, just tell us how this all came into being.
Right. So I think a lot of so feminism originally was a really actually important thing, and there's a lot of value to it, and it was mainly about women being women being able to have the same job opportunities and things like that, and obviously voting rights and having protection from abuse from men and various things that were actually really important, right? And then there was a certain point where it kind of got corrupted by capitalism. And basically, what happened is that the entire goal was to just have to create more profit because a lot of these corporations, their main goal is profit maximization. And how do you create profit maximization? It's getting as many people into the workplace as possible. And that means, basically, if half the population is at home and they're not working, what's the
They're
better thing
useless to
to
the
do?
system.
Yeah, what's the better thing to do? To have them stay at home or to have them come into the workforce as well, and then also become these, like capitalist slaves, right? So
It's like,
that's
you want to be a
basically,
stay-at-home mom? That's not a real job. It's like that.
yeah, so basically, that's where this whole idea of like, men should act like women should act like men, vice versa, right? And I think a lot of people like don't understand that like, feminism actually was originally a very great thing. And it kind of got corrupted by something that wasn't actually for women. It was actually in a lot of ways against women, and men too, but it was something that was kind of manipulative. Like to give you example, there's this guy named Edward Bernays, and he was actually one of the famous one of the first famous marketing strategists. And he basically took the feminist movement and he was like, we're gonna sell cigarettes to women by using feminism as a marketing strategy. And so he actually called cigarettes freedom torches, to market to the women's liberations movement during that time. And there's a lot of other like detailed stuff I can go into, but that's just an example of the type of like where this actually originated from. Like it wasn't something that was pro women. It was uh very corruptionist. It was very like we want something out of women and we want to use them pretty much. And there's a lot of other things too that came out of that too, like the sexual revolution. There was a lot of capitalist engineering that was in that as well. As others say, again, I'm not trying to like say communism is good and capitalism is bad. Like I'm not talking about capitalism is entirely bad. I'm just saying like a lot of these corporations really took over. They like a lot of the culture was socially engineered for profit maximization. And the reason why a lot of the family structure was broken down, a lot of these other things happened is because when you have men and women that you know can't form a family, can't do all these different types of things, it's easier for corporations to take advantage, it's easier for the government to take advantage. It's just easier to have power over people when they don't have a family structure that's actually functional, that's actually able to, you see a lot of the rising divorce rates, you see a lot of these issues between men and women, and a lot of that is socially engineered purposefully, because of the fact that it creates it takes power away from the actual strong bonds that men and women can create, within a family structure. So I think that explains. Hopefully that's the best I can
Yeah.
talk about on that point.
Yeah. Thank you, Gio. Bethany, you want to share something?
Yeah, I just want to say, well, first of all, Gio, that was awesome. I've heard a lot of that as well. And to that note, so I was incredibly blessed to be a stay-at-home mom. My daughter's, good grief, I just forgot her age. She's 22. So she just graduated college, and I was blessed to be a stay-at-home mom her entire life to this point. And there were multiple times during her younger years in school where I would get into conversations with other moms and they'd be like, well, I have to work and I'm going to work. And, while some of them, it was a necessity, which I totally understand, but there was plenty of women that I would talk to that I'm like, but do you really have to work? Is that just the message that you're getting from society and our culture that says you need to work because that's it was just this mixed messaging that I was getting from various women, that like, you do have a choice in this, but I don't think that they all felt like that. I mean, there were just times where I would personally, I was getting mixed messages as well, because there were times where I was like, should I feel guilty? Like I had this sense of guilt for being able to be a stay-at-home mom. I mean, there were sacrifices that my husband and I made in a big way so that I could do that, because we just felt that that was, for us, that was what was needed. And so there is that message still that's, around for women, that like Gio was saying, that women have to work. They have to be in the workforce too, just like men. And it's just, again, that misunderstanding about what feminine and masculine really ultimately is. So
Anybody else want to share? You really gonna be quiet this whole time, Brandy Lynn?
Yes, today I'm listening.
Okay, that's great. That's awesome.
And this is definitely an area that I can grow on, because I've had to play both roles for so long.
Yep.
And I didn't have a choice.
Yep.
So, and of course that's my fault, because I lost compass, I lost sight of my Heavenly Father. And so I was searching for love in all the wrong places, trying to integrate into a world that I didn't have a fraction of a clue of, because I grew up in church. And you know, 43 years old, still learning, and understanding boundaries and what's acceptable and not acceptable. And I did not have a strong father system at all. So what that looked like, what a positive masculine figure looked like, I had no idea. I was surrounded by a strong woman, and I grew up in a church where the idea of God is that you will never be good enough, that your sins are as filthy rags, and so you will always be a filthy rag. And so that's probably that is the energy that I brought into myself. And it wasn't until I got older that I'm like, this hurts. This is too much. And it's definitely not something that I want to teach my son. So I'd rather be alone in my space than share it with something or someone that's not at that level. And so I'm like, oh, hey, there's boundaries. Oh, hey, there's, if I want a certain thing, I've got to be a certain thing, and I've got to hold to that and vest them properly. And I guess I'm still learning the vesting process. Or maybe like I'm just in the point where I don't, it has to come from God, man. That's
Well, I think that you I mean, thanks for sharing, because like, what I was saying earlier is like there's a topic that there's a lot of healing around. I think it brings up a lot of pain for a lot of people, because we've lived a life that doesn't have this in the way that we feel like we would like, right? So I think you're speaking for a lot of people. So thanks for being voice to that. But I think the relationship with Jesus and relationship with God, like now that you're like developing that in a more genuine way, it's almost like imagine like you're here Jesus is here, God is here, and then you're developing this relationship, right? And you're deepening it more and more. And then the man just is like, he comes up here in the middle. He's like, but he comes between, you see what I'm saying? Like it's the natural, it's the same if you're a man with the woman who comes up, right? But it's like if you're in that proper aligned relationship with God, and if Jesus is your bridge, Jesus, the cool thing about I think it's actually, well, I think if you're a woman, Jesus can be your model of a man. It's a high bar, so I'm not saying the guy will be it's going to be Jesus, but it's a point of direction, you know. Um, so that's cool that you can have that even if you don't have anybody in your life, you have that relationship, you know, and you can deepen that relationship. And then I feel like you're creating this like vibration, more and more you're in this like loving vibration, you're in alignment. As a friend of mine says, are you in alignment? So you're in alignment. And then naturally the right people are gonna come into being in that right relationship with God, Yeah. So I think that's the way. Jeff, you want to say anything about the mastermind, the men's mastermind?
Yeah, so the mastermind for me it's been pretty huge. Um, I've experienced a lot of growth. And it's a lot of like what Jacob and Gio touched on, just having that support of other men to talk to and talk about things in a non-judgmental way, and being able to be vulnerable and share with other men has been huge for me. And then just I've developed like a pretty tight community through Jacob, and there's other guys in there, Avery. They're my best friends. I mean, literally like my actual friends that you can call up and talk about anything with.
Not just your Facebook friends.
Yeah, not just my Facebook friends, not just like, I used to be a real bad alcoholic, so they're not just like drinking buddies, they're actual friends. And so and it's been good in that way too. Like I just kind of touched on, like I joined the mastermind about a year from getting sober from alcohol, and I mean I was a bad alcoholic, still functioning, but pretty bad. So I kind of feel like I'm in a place in my life where I'm basically like starting over. I feel like just experiencing like emotions for the first time, and feelings, and not just suppressing them, and just so having that space and those friends to be able to talk about that kind of stuff has just been huge. And then spiritually as well, thank you, Brandy Lynn, for sharing what you shared about the dirty rag. Like in God, like I grew up in that same situation, very, very religious, and that is how I feel a lot of times. So it's like, and now coming to this, first the mastermind, and then to this group, it's just been amazing and amazing.
We're gonna start calling those the dirty rag churches.
Yeah, so it's like
you're a dirty rag church.
Just discovering that there's so much more than what your neighborhood church, and it's just it's absolutely amazing, and very grateful for the work that you're doing, Brian and Annie, and grateful for everybody here in the mastermind. And so this is a subject that's a little bit outside of my range, but
that's good.
So it's good for me to be part of this conversation. So
Gio?
I just have one quick thing to say. This isn't about the mastermind. It's kind of back to what we were originally talking about. But I remember Jacob said something about how, you know, there's some men who have sort of a toxic masculinity, right? And I think a lot of, especially like from what I've heard in my generation, this word gets thrown around a lot, like toxic masculine. And I think there is a toxic masculine and there's a toxic feminine too. And I think what happens is that that kind of arises from the need to want to have power over the, you know, for men that want to have power over women or for women to want to have power over men. And that usually comes from hurt. It comes from heartbreak. It comes from, you know, trauma from the opposite gender, right? You know, a lot of men uh in my generation have a lot of trauma from women, and because of that they become this very toxic masculine guy, right? And the same thing happens to women as well. A lot of women have trauma as well in my generation and other generations. And um, you know, that also leads to a sort of like toxic feminine, right? And what happens when you're in this toxic feminine or masculine, it doesn't allow for you to be complementary to the masculine or feminine. Like the polarity can't exist if you're always trying to be in this very toxic, you know, like kind of you know, combative form of masculinity or femininity. It doesn't allow for there to be a healthy relationship. And I think a lot of, you know, the suffering that is caused with relationships between men and women exist because they are a lot of, you know, they're in their toxic masculine or toxic feminine, right? And I think a lot of you know, when you enter that state, whether it's from trauma, whether it's from heartbreak, whether it's from not having a father figure or maybe not having a mother or something like that, right? It can be for various reasons. But when you don't allow yourself to heal from that, not only do you end up not being able to have a healthy, functional relationship, but it also makes you hurt the people of the opposite gender a lot more as well, because people are looking for somebody like in for a relationship to function, you have to have somebody who has a healthy concept of knowing how to function in that relationship. And if you can't find that, you know, if you're looking for that, but every person you run into is toxic, in a toxic masculine or toxic feminine way of existing, then you're going to get hurt a lot. And I think a lot of people, especially in my generation, like they get hurt because they try to, like, maybe they have had somewhat of a healthy upbringing, but they can't find people who also have that, right? And then also sometimes you know, then they also turn into that toxic, you know, oh, I have to turn toxic now because these other people are toxic, you know. And it's just a cycle that continues and continues. And like I also see with a lot of women that, you know, they're told that, you know, men in my generation particularly, they're told that, you know, men are bad and they're misogynist and all that stuff, and then they end up with men who actually are that. And then it's just a continuous cycle of like, I'm told that men are this way. I end up with men that are this way, and then I start to think that they're this way, and it just continues, right? And then for men, I think also too, there's another subsection of culture where it's like all women are you know, very you know, toxic and don't want healthy relationships and only want to sleep around and break your heart and all these different things, right? And so a lot of men also start to build that belief, and then they attract that into their life, and then they start to build that belief again. And so it's always a continuous cycle of like belief and then attracting it, and then that belief continues. So I think the only way to really break out of that is to allow yourself to heal, is to allow yourself to realize that there is healthy relationships that exist, and there is a way to, for the masculine and feminine, to be complementary. And there's examples of that in the real world. And even though it might seem like from your past or from trauma that you have that it's so hard to find that, but I've learned in my own life that everything is a matter of perspective. And if you can change your perspective, if you can see that there actually are people that have those healthy relationships, then it will give you an ability to heal and actually attract that into your life, because you can't attract it into your life if you have this belief that only the opposite gender is only toxic. There's only toxic people in the opposite gender. It will not serve you. So I definitely think that healing yourself and having an optimistic perspective is very important.
Thanks, Gio. I think that that could be a good resting point for us. Let me give you a couple ways to plug in. So I mentioned the retreat September 28th at our place, the first one that we're doing here. You all are invited. Great opportunity to connect in person. First one we're having at our place here in Southwest Virginia on 6 acres. It's like about 2 hours. Yeah, 2 hours, close to 2 hours north of Asheville, North Carolina. So I'd love to see you all. I know a couple of you already are committed to going. I'd love to see you guys there for that. And then I have personal coaching and doing couples coaching, which is extra relevant with our conversation this evening. So doing couples coaching and personal coaching. The men's mastermind, of course. Have a Telegram group, and this here will become a podcast, and this will be out on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast. So you guys will all be famous, and you can tell your friends to join us. We have some other events coming up in Atlanta, Charleston, South Carolina, and I think that's it. So much. This was great stuff. Thanks everybody for sharing authentically and vulnerably. Let's make it a great week. Feel free to invite anybody to join us. Oh, and if you could donate to support, I have to say that too. That's very helpful. See you next Thursday. If you have any themes you want to share, like these are things I want to explore, questions, let me know, and we'll bring those in as well. Thanks everybody. So much love and appreciation for all of you.